Houston. Houston, we have a problem. DJ Apollo has landed. I repeat, DJ Apollo has landed.
Here, mate.
Hello everyone, you are listening to the Tales of Music and Film podcast. My name is Christian Taylor, and thank you for clicking on today's episode. And I just want to say to all you listening in, I hope your lives are going extremely well, and I hope everything is working out for you just fine. Things have been going very well on my end. So what have I been up to recently? Well, I've been working a ton, to say the least. For anyone who doesn't know, I have recently started working 3 jobs. So if you've been listening to the show for a while now, you may know that I am currently now a substitute teacher. I am also a Walmart employee and a part-time dishwasher at a restaurant right outside of my hometown. So my free time has been greatly reduced, to say the least. But you know what? I'm okay with that. I think the important thing is that I'm working hard, I'm really making a difference, and I'm making a lot of good hours at all my jobs. So everything is going very, very well, and I am very happy about that. The universe above has really blessed me with everything that I've gotten to do, all the opportunities I'm getting, and then most importantly, I thank the universe above for the amazing family and friends that I have and the amazing life that I've gotten to live so far. So I have nothing to complain about. So that's what I've been up to recently. It's just, really fully embracing being a young adult and working my butt off every single day. So yeah, I've just been non-stop work. But thankfully the weekend opened up some time on my schedule, so I kind of figured, hey, why not sit down and do another amazing podcast recording? So some other very exciting news is that the short film that I was a part of in making, A Mother's Sacrifice, has been picked up by another film festival in France. So that marks the 3rd festival that has picked up this movie, and I cannot put into words how grateful I am with the amount of attention that this short film is making. Helping in making this movie has been a huge highlight for me this year, and to see it get so much attention it's just filled my heart with pure joy. I have my fingers crossed that this movie wins some awards, but it's a little early yet. We still got a little bit to go. The Chicago Film Festival, that was the first one to pick this movie up. The awards for that are going to be this coming weekend. So I'm very curious to see what pictures are going to be picked for awards in that festival. So I'm hoping we get a nomination. That'd be pretty darn cool. I mean, the fact that these 3 festivals have picked the movie up, that's enough to have me be very happy. So, and the last thing regarding that movie is that the premiere for it is this coming Saturday, and I'm very, very excited for that. Catelyn Davis, who she's a great friend of mine, she co-wrote, she produced and directed A Mother's Sacrifice, and she informed me about a couple of weeks ago that she is going to be putting me in charge of the Q&A for it, which we'll do after the movie finishes screening. We are going to be holding the premiere for A Mother's Sacrifice at the junior high building here in my hometown. And there's going to be a ton of people showing up to this event, so I'm very excited about this. And I ran into Catelyn and her family at my Walmart job, and it was kind of funny. We were talking for a while. Then at the very end, she just happens to mention to me, "Oh, by the way, I'm putting you in charge of the Q&A afterwards." And it took my brain like a few seconds, right, to really process that tad bit of information. I was just completely mind blown that she would pick me, of all people, to do that job. I felt very honored. And I felt very blessed from the universe above that I got this amazing opportunity. And I'm going to do my very best with this very amazing opportunity. And her and I have worked up a good amount of questions that we made, into a list. And it's going to be more of like a point of reference. So we have a long list of questions all organized and ready to go. So it looks like we're all set to go for the premiere. I have my suit put together, so this is going to be very cool. Like, this is going to be a pretty big event for my small town. So, very exciting news. So, that's got me very excited. So, very, very, very cool stuff is going on. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, so what are we going to be talking about in today's episode? Well, I sat back wondering, right? So, we are now officially over halfway through September. I mean, heck, we're even nearing the end, more like, it's going to be October before you know it. So as far as I'm concerned, right, we are like officially in like the Halloween Eve of this year. So I figure it'd be high time. How about we start our next Tales of Music and Film Halloween marathon, shall we? Because it's been a while since I've been doing some. It's been a while since I've done a consistent run through of some scary movies. So I kind of figured, why not start it now? So this is very exciting. So for the rest of September and mostly through October, we're going to be covering scary movies all the way to Halloween night. So this is going to be very, very cool. I got a long list of amazing films and shows I can't wait to review with all you guys. Got a lot of cool content is on the way. So how are we going to start this marathon? I kind of figured, with this movie's sequel currently in theaters, I figured why not talk about the movie that started the story in the first place? We're going to be talking about the original Beetlejuice from 1988, directed by Tim Burton, because its sequel, Beetlejuice, is currently making the rounds in theaters, with mostly positive feedback from what I've been hearing from people, so let's talk about it. So, Beetlejuice, I only watched this movie a couple of times growing up, and I thought it was okay when I was a kid, but it did really freak me out at the time. I only watched it a few times, but I remembered enjoying it, but I felt like there were a lot of strange parts in it, like the scare stuff and all that. I wasn't a scary movie fan yet. Like I was kind of late to the party with the scary movie genre. I really didn't start appreciating it till I was around, 15, 16 years old. But yeah, Beetlejuice really did freak the heck out of me growing up. But I actually rewatched this movie for the very first time about a couple of weeks ago, and this was the first time that I've seen this movie in about like a decade at the least. So, and honestly, this movie, rewatching it as a young adult, it was way better than what I remembered. Like, I was actually blown away with how entertaining it was. And kind of find out, here's some trivia for you very early in the recording, but this was actually Tim Burton's second official movie. I did not realize that, I gotta tell you, for his second movie, I think he did a really good job. There's a lot of very cool history about what led to the film being made, the filmmaking portion of it, and the world's reaction when it was released. There's a lot of cool stuff to get into, so I have a good amount of notes here that I can't wait to share with all you guys. So let's start talking about it. Let's start by talking about the man, the myth, the legend himself, Tim Burton. Now, I haven't really seen that many Tim Burton projects when I was growing up. I didn't watch that many of them. I did, however, get really hooked on Tim Burton's Batman movies. Growing up as a kid, I watched Batman 1989 and Batman Returns. I watched both those movies a ton, especially the first Batman film from '89. I've watched that movie so many times that I can recite almost every line from it, especially the Joker dialogue. Like, that was the Joker's lines in that movie is some of the most iconic things I've ever heard, and Jack Nicholson absolutely knocked it out of the park as the Joker. Phenomenal job. And Michael Keaton was amazing as Batman and Bruce Wayne. Like, his portrayal of Bruce Wayne and Batman is pretty darn good. He's up there with Christian Bale's, version as well of Bruce Wayne and Batman. But so yeah, the Batman movies, I watched those a lot growing up. I also saw some of Tim's other projects, like Corpse Bride I watched maybe once or twice. I watched Edward Scissorhands. That was actually a pretty good one. And Nightmare Before Christmas. Now, he didn't direct that movie, but I believe he did have some involvement in that one. And I also watched his remake of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, where he had Johnny Depp play him. I actually watched his remake of that story a lot when I was growing up. I liked his take on the story. It was slightly more weird, but it was still a very enjoyable movie overall. But that's about it. And the newest thing I've seen, obviously, is the new Wednesday Addams show on Netflix, which Tim directed. They're currently filming season 2 right now, and a teaser for it just came out like a few days ago if you haven't seen it yet, but I'm pretty excited about that. Like, Tim Burton, they couldn't have found a better person to direct the Wednesday Addams show. Like, Addams Family, like, that is straight up, Tim Burton's alley. Like, if anybody can make a great story with those characters, it's him. They couldn't have found a better man for the job. Like, he did, the first season of the Wednesday show was phenomenal. It was great. I think I need to rewatch it again, actually. I need to do that. But yeah, Tim, I'm really happy he's making a comeback in Hollywood, like the Wednesday show, and now the Beetlejuice sequel. Like, he's making a good comeback, and he's also, recently, he got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, so I'm very happy about that. That man's really deserved of that honor, I think he's earned that, He's made a lot of great projects, and I think he's a pretty cool dude, so pretty happy he's getting all these cool opportunities. But I have always loved, Tim Burton's style of filmmaking, and I found this little quote where it says this: renowned filmmaker Tim Burton established his distinct Burtonesque visual style through a childhood fascination with the unearthly and grotesque. So, that's interesting. So now, let's start getting into the actual movie itself, Beetlejuice. So Beetlejuice is a 1988 American dark fantasy comedy horror film directed by Tim Burton from a screenplay by Michael McDowell and Warren Scarine, based on a story by McDowell and Larry Wilson. The film stars Alec Baldwin, Jenna Davis, Jeffrey Jones, Catherine O'Hara, Winona Ryder, and Michael Keaton as the title character, Beetlejuice. So the movie was released in the United States on March 30th, 1988 by Warner Brothers. The film was a critical and commercial success, grossing $75 million on a $15 million budget. It won the Academy Award for Best Makeup and 3 Saturn Awards, Best Horror Film, Best Makeup, and Best Supporting Actress for Sylvia Sidney. The film's success spawned an animated television series, video games, and a 2018 stage musical. So what I really enjoyed about this movie, firstly, I just loved how, weird, gothly, funny, scary, and upfront it was, about everything. But yeah, Tim really does this amazing job of making, these kind of like socially awkward, weird movies that surprisingly work very well. And I like the dark tone gothliness he has going on with a lot of his pictures, but it's like you can't take your eyes off of it. It's a good kind of weird, Like, a lot of strange things happen in this, but it doesn't bother you too much, With how the afterlife is designed, and all that, and the creatures, the puppeteer work that you see, these funny animations, like, you just can't take your eyes off of it, Like, there's a lot of weird visual stuff in this movie, but it's, I don't know, I really enjoyed everything that this movie featured. I really did. I really enjoyed how simple, the story was altogether about this poor young couple who drowned in a car accident, and then they realize they're dead, and now they have to navigate their way through the afterlife and figure out how to be poltergeists or, ghosts, while having to deal with this new, weird family moving into their house, and they form this really, really cute friendship with this new family's daughter named Linda, where she can somehow see our 2 main characters, who are Barbara and Adam, who are played by Jenna Davis and Alec Baldwin. They're the young couple that the movie centers around, and they were killed in a car accident not long into the movie. Then the rest of the movie is them navigating the afterlife, and it's a very, very cool story. Getting to see how weird, the afterlife is in that world. And I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it had a great plot overall. And I think it's a really good family fun movie. But yes, there are some very inappropriate stuff in this that we will get into as we progress through this episode. But the thing that really surprised me was that I remember Beetlejuice getting more screen time in this. I was actually surprised watching this and realizing that Michael Keaton's Beetlejuice is actually not in the movie very much. His screen time, like, the movie's 90 minutes long, but I think if you added up the screen time that he had in this, I think it would add up to around, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 minutes. Like, overall, it wasn't the movie that much, but I think they portioned it out just right in a way where, you know, like, he showed up when the movie really needed him. I think that was actually a pretty good call on Tim Burton's part to not show him so much, because, yeah, the movie's named after him, but he's kind of like the main, like, villain or creature of the story, I guess you could say. And I think the less you show of the monster or creature, the better the film works. You know, like Jaws or the original Alien, just to give an example of, like, the less you show, the better. So I think he had just the right amount of screen time in this movie. And I think Michael Keaton did a really good job playing this character. Like, when I was watching some of his scenes, like, when we see him in that cowboy commercial on that TV, he was giving me serious, like, Jim Carrey, Ace Ventura vibes, you know, like Pet Detective. Like, Keaton was giving off some serious Jim Carrey energy when playing Beetlejuice, and it worked very well. I thought he did a great job playing this character. So the notes continue with, so after Barbara and Adam Maitland, I think how you say their last name, die in a car accident, they find themselves stuck haunting their country residence, unable to leave the house. When a unbearable new family called the Denzes enter the house, played by Catherine O'Hara, Jeffrey Jones, and their teen daughter Linda, who's played by Winona Ryder. They buy the house. They are moving into it, and Barbara and Adam don't like that. So first, they spend a good portion of the movie trying to scare them out of the house, but they keep failing because, you know, they're brand new ghosts. They have no idea what the heck they're doing. And later on in the film, after seeing that commercial with Beetlejuice that I mentioned earlier, they decide to go to Beetlejuice and ask him for help, but they regret that decision very quickly because Beetlejuice becomes a danger for them, and he endangers innocent Linda as well, so then they have to spend the rest of the movie trying to keep Linda safe away from Beetlejuice. So that's really about the main premise of what goes down in this movie, and it's a late 80s classic as far as I'm concerned. So the movie was directed by Tim Burton. It was distributed by Warner Brothers, and the cinematography was done by Thomas E. Ackerman. And it was edited by Jane Corson. That's how you say that person's name, I believe. So the cast for this movie is, we have Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice, we have Alec Baldwin as Adam Maitland, we have Jenna Davis as Barbara Maitland, we have Jeffrey Jones as Charles Dietz, we have Catherine O'Hara as Della Dietz, and then we have Winona Ryder as Linda Dietz, we have Sylvia Sidney as Juno, we have Robert Goulet as Maxie Dean, and Dick Covett as Bernard. So that's about the main cast for this movie, and I thought all the actors in this did a very good job. Like, this movie had a great cast. I think the best character in this movie was Linda. Like, I am fully convinced that Winona Ryder has definitely got to be, like, one of the, like, OG, like, goth girls. Like, the way she dresses in this movie, like, I'm pretty convinced she has to be, like, the OG goth girl that really started, like, that trend. I'm convinced she's got to be up there. But I am a huge fan of Winona Ryder. Even though I haven't seen her in that many projects, I absolutely love her character in Stranger Things. If you guys haven't seen Stranger Things yet, you should definitely go watch that show. They're actually currently filming the 5th and final season. I need to cover that show on my podcast sometime. I need to do that. It's one great show. Yeah, Winona Ryder was definitely the best part about this movie. I really enjoyed how she played her character Linda in this. Like, Linda was definitely one of the best characters. But everybody brought their A game in this. I loved all the performances. So, the writing portion of this movie. So, after the financial success of Pee-wee's Big Adventure from 1985, Byrne became a, quote, bankable director and began working on a script for Batman with Sam Hamm. While Warner Brothers was willing to pay for the script's development, it was less willing to greenlight Batman. Byrne had become disheartened by the lack of imagination and originality in the scripts he had been sent, particularly Hot to Trot. Michael McDowell and Larry Wilson formed a partnership with entertainment attorney Michael Bender, and Beetlejuice was their first original project. After developing the story, McDowell and Wilson decided they would write the first draft of the screenplay together, while Wilson would only take story by credit as well as his producer credit. Byrne had gotten to know and worked with McDowell and Wilson, who co-wrote the script for The Jar, an episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents that Tim Burton directed. Byrne read their first draft of Beetlejuice, liked it, but had other projects that kept him from becoming involved at that time. So the original script is far less comedic and much darker. For example, the McLand's car crash is depicted in more graphic detail, with Barbara's arm crushed and the couple screaming for help as they slowly drown. A reference to this remains in the finished movie when Barbara remarks that her arm feels frozen upon returning home as a ghost. And instead of possessing the Dizettes and forcing them to dance during dinner, the McLands cause a vine patterned carpet to come to life and attack them by tangling them to their chairs. The character of Beetlejuice, envisioned in the first draft as a winged demon who takes on the form of a short Middle Eastern man, is also intent on killing the Dizettes rather than scaring them, and wants to canoodle with Linda instead of marriage. In this version of the script, Beetlejuice need only be exhumed from his grave to be summoned, after which he is free to wreak havoc. He can be summoned but not controlled by saying his name 3 times, and wanders the world freely, tormenting different characters in different manifestations. In another version of the script, the film concludes with the McLands, the Dizettes, and Otho conducting an exorcism ritual that destroys Beetlejuice, and the McLands transforming into miniature versions of themselves and moving into the Adams model of their home, which they refurbished to look like their house before the Dizettes moved in. Co-author and producer Larry Wilson has talked about the reaction to the first draft by a prominent executive at Universal, where Wilson was employed at the time. He says, "I won't name names here, but I worked at Universal Studios at the time. I was director of development for the director Walter Hill. I had a very good relationship with a very prominent executive at Universal. He liked me, and he liked what I was doing with Walter and the material I was bringing in. I gave him Beetlejuice to read, and I gave it to him on a Friday, and on Monday, his assistant called me and said, 'Well, he wants to meet with you.' My initial reaction was, wow, he'd read it. He must have loved it, or he wouldn't have wanted to see me so soon, but I went into his office, and he literally said, 'What are you doing with your career?'" He continues with, so he says, "This piece of weirdness, this is what you're going to go out into the world with? You're developing into a very good executive. You've got great taste in material. Why are you going to squander all of that for this piece of crap?" was basically what he was saying. It goes to show, right? Shortly after that, we sold it to the Geffen Company. So there was some rewriting with the script. So Scareen's rewrite shifted the film's tone, eliminating the graphic nature of the McLand's deaths and further developing the concept created by McDowell and Wilson that the afterlife is a complex bureaucracy. Scareen's rewrite also added to McDowell and Wilson's depiction of the limbo that keeps Barbara and Adam trapped inside their home. in the original script, it takes the form of a massive void filled with giant claw gears that shred the fabric of time and space as they move. Scarine had Barbara and Adam encounter different limbos every time they leave their home, including Clock World and the Sandworm World, identified as Saturn's moon Titan. Scarine also introduced the leitmotif of music accompanying Barbara and Adam's ghostly hijinks. Although his script specified R&B tunes instead of Harry Belafonte, and was to have concluded with Linda dancing to When a Man Loves a Woman. Scarine's first draft retained some of McDowell's Beetlejuice more sinister characteristics, but toned down the character to make him a troublesome pervert rather than blatantly murderous. Beetlejuice's true form was that of the Middle Eastern man, and much of his dialogue was written in African American vernacular English. This version concluded with the Dezettes returning to New York and leaving Linda in the care of the Maitlands, who with Linda's help transformed their home's exterior into a stereotypical haunted house while returning the interior to its previous state. It also featured deleted scenes, such as the real estate agent Jane trying to convince the Dietzes to allow her to sell the house for them, having sold it to them in the first place. Charles and Delia decline in a revelation of how Beetlejuice had died centuries earlier. He attempted to hang himself while drunk, having been rejected by a woman, only to mess it up and die slowly by choking to death rather than quickly by snapping his neck, and wound up working for Juno before striking out on his own as a freelance bioexorcist. Retrospectively, McDowell was impressed with how many people made the connection between the film's title and the star Beetlejuice. So that's pretty interesting, it's kind of cool getting to look and see like what the first drafts, of the script was like. I think it was a very good idea that they toned down Beetlejuice, because I feel like if they'd went with that original approach, because I think it would have been made the film harder to watch, in my opinion, for sure. I think it was a very good idea that they decided to tone it down a lot. Because, yeah, Beetlejuice is still weird and extremely evil, but there's this big, funny, goofy side to him. Like, the movie needs comedy, and I think the rewrites for Beetlejuice helped it out tremendously. So that was a very good decision on their part. So what about the casting for this movie? Well, there are some casting choices in this next bit that's going to really surprise you. So, casting. Burton's original choice for Beetlejuice was Sammy Davis Jr. The producers also considered Dudley Moore and Sam Kinison for the role, but Geffen suggested Keaton. Burton was unfamiliar with Michael Keaton's work, but was quickly convinced. Several actresses auditioned for the role of Linda Dietz, including Sarah Jessica Parker, Brooke Shields, Lori Loughlin, Diane Lane, Justine Bateman, Molly Ringwald, Juliette Lewis, and Jennifer Connelly. Alyssa Milano was the runner-up for the role. Burton cast Ryder upon seeing her in Lucas. Angelica Houston was originally cast as Della Dietz, but dropped out because of illness. O'Hara quickly signed on, while Burton claimed it took a lot of time to convince other cast members to sign, as they didn't know what to think of the weird script. Burton also felt that O'Hara and Jones would make a cute couple. Linda Dietz was notably cast with the look and persona of the goth subculture. Now, I think that was pretty obvious. I'm convinced. Like I said, Winona Ryder's character, Linda, she's got to be up there with, the OG, goth girls that really started that trend. I'm very curious, when did the term, goth girl, really come from? I'll have to look that up sometime. Like, I'm wondering if Linda is one of the OGs, or does goth go back way farther than what I'm thinking? I'll have to look into that sometime. But I think Beetlejuice really did help get that trend get even more popular. But yeah, Linda's character was definitely part of the goth subculture, to say the least. I would definitely say, yeah. But what about the filmmaking progress? So Beetlejuice's budget was only $15 million, with just $1 million given over to the visual effects work. Considering the scale and scope of the effects, which included stop motion, replacement animation, prosthetic makeup, puppeteer, and blue screen, it was always Burton's intention to make the style similar to that of the B-movies he grew up with as a child. He said that he wanted to make effects look cheap and purposely fake looking. Burton wanted to hire Anton Furst as production designer after being impressed with his work on The Company of Wolves from 1984 and Full Metal Jacket from 1987, but Furst was committed to high spirits, a choice he later regretted. He hired Bo Welch, his future collaborator on Edward Scissorhands and Batman Returns. The test screenings for Beetlejuice were met with positive feedback and prompted Burton to film an epilogue featuring Beetlejuice foolishly angering a witch doctor. So that's how that scene came to be. That's pretty interesting. So apparently that scene was not a part of the original screen test showing, so he added that afterwards. That's pretty interesting. So, one of my favorite things about a Tim Burton movie is the soundtrack. So the Beetlejuice soundtrack was first released in 1988 on LP, CD, and cassette tape. Features most of the film's score, written and arranged by the legend himself, Danny Elfman, amazing composer. So Geffen reissued the original 1988 soundtrack on vinyl in 2015, which was remastered and pressed to vinyl by Waxwork Records in 2019 for the film's 30th anniversary. The soundtrack features 2 original recordings performed by Harry Belafonte, used in the film Deo, the Banana Boat Song, and Jump in the Line, Shake Sonora. 2 other vintage Belafonte recordings that appear in the film are absent from the soundtrack: Man Smart, Woman Smarter, and Sweetheart from Venezuela. The soundtrack entered the Billboard 200 Albums chart the week ending June 25th, 1988, at number 145, peaking 2 weeks later at number 118, and spending a total of 6 weeks on the chart. This was after the film had already fallen out of the top 10, and before the video release in October, Deo received a fair amount of airtime at the time in the support of the soundtrack. The complete score, with the Belafonte tracks included, was released in both the DVD and the Blu-ray as the isolated music track in the audio settings menu. This version of the audio track consists entirely of clean musical cues, uninterrupted by dialogue or sound effects. So that's pretty interesting. And I gotta say, I thought this film had an amazing soundtrack. I mean, I don't think Danny Elfman has ever composed a bad movie soundtrack in his life. I would love to do another episode sometime, just giving him some praise, because I covered James Horner before, who is my favorite film composer, but Danny Elfman's got to be in my top 5. Like, this guy has made some amazing soundtracks I'd love to talk about sometime. But yeah, great song choices, like, Shake Sonora. I love that song. I like how it was used for the ending with Winona Ryder's character Linda floating up in the air and dancing to it. I thought that was a very cool choice. I thought it was a pretty funny way to end the movie. I loved it. So Beetlejuice opened theatrically in the United States on March 30th, 1988, earning over $8 million its opening weekend, which at the time was an Easter weekend record. The film eventually grossed $75.1 million worldwide. Beetlejuice was a financial success recouping its $15 million budget and becoming the 10th highest grossing film of 1988. Well, I would just say that I think that proves, I think your film was a big success. I think when it does all that, I think you have yourself a winner, folks. So what about the critical response of the movie? Let's take a look. So Beetlejuice was met with a mostly positive response. Based on 115 reviews collected by Rotten Tomatoes, Beetlejuice holds a 83% overall approval rating with an average rating of 7 out of 10. The website's critical consensus reads, "Brilliantly bizarre and overflowing with ideas, Beetlejuice offers some of Michael Keaton's most deliciously maniac work and creepy, funny fun for the whole family." On Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 71 out of 100, based on 19 reviews. Audiences surveyed by CinemaScore gave the film a B on a grade scale of A to F. Pauline Kael called the film a comedy classic. Jonathan Rosenbaum called it a creative mess and a positive review in the Chicago Reader. Denson Howe of the Washington Post felt Beetlejuice had the perfect balance of bizarreness, comedy, and horror, which I would have to agree with him 100%. That's another key word I think needs to be mentioned here is balance. I think this movie did an excellent job of balancing out, all of its themes of weird, social awkwardness, goth, dark, comedy, suspense, all these different things, right? It did a great job of balancing all those things out. Janet Maslin of the New York Times gave the film a negative review, writing that the film tries anything and everything for effect and only occasionally manages something marginally funny and is about as funny as a shrunken head. Roger Ebert gave the film 2 out of 4 stars, writing that he would have been more interested if the screenplay had preserved their Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis sweet romanticism and cut back on the slapstick. Ebert called Keaton unrecognizable behind pounds of makeup and said his scenes don't seem to fit with the other action. So, yeah, I think with any film project, there's going to be some negative reviews. It's like that common quote, you can't please everybody. So, I think no matter, you're going to get a long run of positive comments, right? But there's going to be some negative ones in there, that's how it goes with any film project. Not everybody's going to like it, but hey, that's a good thing. Everybody has, their own opinions. A lot of people may like it, and some don't, We're all human beings. We all have different opinions on things. So I don't judge these people at all with their opinions, they were honest with themselves. In this film, they just didn't seem to like it that much. And that's alright. That's their opinion. So, here's something pretty interesting. So at the 61st Academy Awards, Beetlejuice won the Academy Award for Best Makeup, and while the British Academy of Film and Television Arts nominated the film for Best Visual Effects and Makeup at the 42nd British Academy Film Awards. Beetlejuice won Best Horror Film and Best Makeup at the 1988 Saturn Awards. Sydney also won the Saturn for Best Supporting Actress, and the film received 5 other nominations: Direction for Tim Burton, Writing for McDowell and Scarron, Best Supporting Actor for Keaton, Music for Elfman, and Special Effects. Beetlejuice was nominated for the Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation. Beetlejuice was the 88th in the American Film Institute's list of Best Comedies. Now that I think is a pretty honor. That's a pretty cool honor to be, on a list of top comedies. So this film, it had a lot going for it. I think it made the rounds and made an impact, to say the least. And that's about going to wrap up the note portion of covering Beetlejuice. But yeah, overall, I love this movie to death. And that history was very interesting, to cover. And I hope you learned something very interesting about everything that I shared with you. It's always so interesting getting to go through and seeing how the drafts of the script were changed over time. The actors and actresses who almost were cast to play the roles, but they ultimately picked someone else, And I think they picked all the right actors for the job. I mean, I can't really imagine anybody else playing Linda. Like, I was picturing some of those other actresses, in that role, like Jennifer Connelly, and I don't know, like, Winona Ryder was so perfect for the role that I can't imagine anybody else playing her. Like, I felt like that role was made specifically for her. But yeah, she knocked it out of the park. Same with anybody else. Like, everybody brought their A game in this. I think everyone involved gave A+ performances. I don't think there was one bad act in this whole thing, to tell you the truth. And I just liked how the film balanced all those different elements. I think the comedy and horror were definitely the best parts for me. I mean, my favorite parts overall of this movie was definitely Adam and Barbara going on their adventure, exploring the afterlife, learning how it works. And I think it was pretty funny with the bureaucracy aspect of it, where you find out that they're in trouble because they waited too long to enter the afterlife, and that they had to have a meeting with their secretary telling them that you guys are in debt and that you should have been following the steps in their book that was given to them. I just think it's so funny when someone dies, they wake up dead, and there's a book they have to pick up and start reading to figure out how the afterlife works. I just think it's so funny to me how it's all like set up. I loved, the color schemes and everything, and I like the detail of how all the people who died are all walking around with the injuries they sustained that led to their deaths. Like, Barbara and Adam didn't have anything because they drowned, so they were perfectly fine. But there were other, like, I remember we saw this one guy who was flat as a pancake because he got ran over by something. Then we have all this team of like football players show up who are all cut up and bruised up because they were all killed in a bus accident, I'm assuming. And then when Barbara and Adam meet with the secretary, her neck is slashed. And so I think it was a cool little detail that they're all walking around with the injuries that led to their deaths. It was a small little, detail. But yeah, the way the afterlife was definitely designed was very interesting. And I thought it was pretty cool with the whole, the world I'd wish the movie maybe could have touched upon a little more was the dune world, I call it, where the sandworms are. Like, that area isn't really explored too much. We see it once, and then Barbara falls into it again towards the very end of the movie, and then she just randomly somehow tames one of the sandworms and has it attack Beetlejuice at the end of the movie. That was a very, quick little ending. I'm sure everyone's wondering, like, how did she manage to do that? But I mean, I don't think it's that big a deal. But I also kind of wish the movie could went into more detail explaining some things, like how was Winona Ryder's character able to see Adam and Barbara even though they're dead? Like, part of me is wondering if Winona Ryder's character Linda is one of those people who can see ghosts. There is a name for that. I think it's a medium or something. But I wish the movie could did a little more detail explaining like how she's able to see them. But again, just a small thing. But other than that, those are really the only things that I would have changed. But overall, there's really no negatives with this movie, whatsoever. And it's a great family movie. It's a great family movie, for everybody to watch. But I mean, heads up, there are some inappropriate adult jokes in this, but the movie does do a good job of kind of like hiding the adult stuff. Like, dude, I was very surprised rewatching this movie and realizing, how much inappropriate humor is in the movie, especially with how perverted Beetlejuice is. I did not realize that. It wasn't until I rewatched it a couple of weeks ago I was like, oh my gosh, all this adult jokes flew right over my head, but it's not really that open with the adult jokes for the most part. But I think overall it's a good Halloween comedy for the whole family to watch. And if you haven't seen it yet, I recommend you check out Beetlejuice. It's a great movie. So I hope you all enjoyed this episode. I hope you guys learned some cool stuff about the movie Beetlejuice. I have a long list of amazing films and topics that I can't wait to cover for all you to listen to. So a lot of cool content is on the way. I want to personally thank you again for your amazing support. It means the world to me. Everybody stay safe out there. Keep living life. And until next time, my name is Christian Taylor, and you are listening to the Tales of Music and Film.